Okay, I thought I'd do a quick scene version of this previous scene using the clouds, trees, and eagles. Let's see what we can come up with in a nice short span of time. Okay, cloud stamp, wiping off the perimeter. Alright. I can kind of expedite this whole process by kind of not wiping it off, but, you know, what is it really going to take? An extra 15 seconds or so? I don't know. Maybe a minute, I don't know, when I wipe it off, but wiping off the perimeter of sky figures, especially where you want that transition to be really nice and graceful as it flows into the, the sibling impressions or additional impressions. It's just kind of a nice thing to do, and I think it just, the end result looks a little bit more kind of in harmony with kind of the spirit of what you're kind of going after when you're stamping sky figures. You want it to be really, kind of really quite seamless and very graceful. I mean, that goes for the same for all of nature, but it's kind of especially true with sky. You know, where we're talking about colored light, kind of transitions of textured, you know, vapor, basically, you know, moisture. You know, when it comes to deep sky images, you know, with moons or suns and things like that, for sunset scenes, you really want that to read really quite elegantly and whatnot. Okay, so twirling around, I go into a little bit more explanation of it in the previous video, but basically I have the billowy part always facing towards my light, where I leave that little space there. Okay? All right. Step 1, clouds. Step 2, okay? This is what I have here. I've used my Distress ink reinkers, okay? Tumbled glass, broken china right here, and blueprint sketch, okay? I'm kind of getting used to using reinkers for inking up my sponge applicators here, so I'm not quite sure if I've used enough or not, but let's see how far those, you know, couple little drops will go. Okay, so retain some of the lightness of your clouds, okay? So it looks like the light is shining on them. If I color them all out, we won't have that reflective type of quality, okay? So just in general, the tops of the clouds are going to remain light, okay? And by the when I say the tops of it, see this darker area in here? I'm kind of just darkening this area, but leaving this part lighter, okay? So you just gotta kind of recognize that area, and it's easy to see. Just if it's darker, then apply your darker tint there, you might say. Now, if you go into some of the light, that's fine, but the basic thing is to just retain some areas of light, so it looks like your light is reflecting off of those things. And that goes for the same with any objects. If you have a mountain or a meadow or something like that, just retaining some lighter areas. Okay, so you have light source and reflected light within all of your scenes. It's just kind of an oscillation of values that can lend itself towards kind of a richer end result than just having colored everything completely the same, okay? So we used to call this checkerboarding in it was a life drawing class. Was it beginning life drawing or was it intermediate? Yeah, it was intermediate, I think. Kind of a terrible teacher that we had. They were a part-time teacher, and sometimes I didn't think they really knew what they were doing. They were terrible. She was a terrible drawer. I don't know what kind of things they did in their own work, but it was kind of more abstract. But the checkerboarding kind of a tip was a very good one from that class. So you always learn something. Okay, now I'm going right into my blueprint sketch. It's quite dark, so I might have taken up too much. Maybe I'll blot some of it off like that. But we're almost done here with the toning here. Okay. Now, the first time when I did this, I thought, it's a little streaky, but I felt that the streaks kind of added to the overall kind of spirit of the scene. You know, with these soaring birds having a little bit of that texture kind of showing. So I'm, if I get it here, I might even try to, incorporate that wispy nature of it into the piece. It's kind of like brush strokes showing, it can contribute to the overall appearance. Okay, do you feel that kind of wispiness kind of moving around like that? So I'm kind of always doing it in that spirit right there. Okay, maybe make the perimeter a little bit darker, and that's one of the things that I was kind of wishing that I did a little bit more of previously. Okay, now this is going back into that Prussian blue. This is the original blue that I stamped my clouds in. I like to make my perimeters a little bit darker by doing that. And when I plan on going all the way to black with my stamped imagery, I like to bring this black, or the same value, to the coloring portion of the piece. So usually it's on the perimeters, if not that, maybe at least the four corners. Okay, I have a lot of that ink in here, so I'm going to switch off to my clean side. It looks quite stained, and it is, but it's not going to affect anything, even if I was using yellow, as long as I've cleaned this off. The inks do tend to stain the foam, but if you clean them off and use them with any color or value of ink, they'll be just fine, provided you've, rinsed it off pretty good. I like to rinse them off and dab them out. Okay, so we have our foundation here. Now, what we'll do is we'll go in with our stamped imagery. Okay, now I'm working on a quarter size page. This one right here is a half page. Okay, see that right there? So I'm not going to have as much room for my imagery, so I'm going to have to really work around things a little bit more. But let's still work with the that scale of using the large eagle along with the two smaller ones. Okay. And I'm going to use a VersaFine black here. I could use my dye-based black. My Marvy black is my favorite black in dye-based inks, but this VersaFine really gives a really strong, deep impression. Okay, it's nice and dark and black. Okay, now I'm going to put my birds in first this time so I can kind of work around them. So I might not be using quite as much of my tree figures in this scene, just because it is so much smaller. Okay, go something like this. I'll put that right in front of the opening of the cloud opening. Okay, here comes the trees. In the last scene, I always kind of had these aiming towards that light there, so let's see what we can do here. Okay, provided the limited space we're talking about, we'll see if we can still utilize these effectively. to give ourselves some space. Oh, one of the things I forgot to do was I forgot to do this in a dark blue. I could have stamped that before and put that eagle right in front of it, but maybe I'll have some... well, let's do it right now. I'll have some kind of darker impressions of, or lighter impressions, I should say, of some of these bare trees right here, okay? Now, I should have done this before my eagles, but just because they're stamped out in the VersaFine, you can't really put dye-based inks over that VersaFine very well, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so all of my different imagery just aimed right towards that opening right there, and that'll give us the kind of the perspective that we're, you know, kind of looking at this scene from. It's like you're laying on the grass, or kind of, you know, just looking up at the sky. You don't have to be laying down, but if we are laying down, it'd be pretty nice. It's like a nice relaxing type of kind of spirit in which we're, as viewers, observing the scene from. Okay, let me try to put this one right across that wing there. Hopefully I don't remove any of the ink off of that wing right there, and I think that'll be fine. Okay, so I'm using the medium pines right here, leafless pine, okay? In the other one where I was using a much larger piece of paper, I did use my large leafless pine on that one. On this one we'll just use the small though, or the medium, sorry. Okay, let's go. I'm going up a little bit higher on this one with this spruce tree just because of the lack of space on the lower area for those eagles. So, alright, let's go now like that. Just aiming it inwards like so. I could even go like this, towards like we're really kind of, you know, looking in at the scene, you know, from a really extreme angle. Like, you know, where you see this entire circle of trees around the entire printer. You can put it, you know, above that opening right there. Okay, but kind of getting there. Here. Okay. Let's go back to our leafless pine. Okay. And let's put in some closer versions of it. I'm going to stay away from the eagles because I want those eagles to have a really strong silhouette, and I don't want to have this going across them. So that's one thing I'm just kind of avoiding. Okay, and how about right here, like this, I can almost really go in there and almost touch that light source. Okay. Kind of getting that feel for that, right? All right, let's go in. One of the things I didn't do too is I didn't use my pigment ink, which would kind of soften that area up a little bit more. So, but I think that looks pretty good, you know, for a quick scene. Let's go in and let's not keep out any of our little details here, okay? But let's make it fairly quick. Because I don't have as much time right here in the spirit of the you know, the format, the time format. Okay, but adding a few of these little highlights right here, and I do believe that adds quite a bit to the scene, and Oh, it just lends itself to this whole spirit of kind of that directional lighting, and this really reinforces that lighting coming from that source up there in the clouds, beyond the clouds, I guess you could say. Okay, so it's always on the top sides of these branches, kind of the, parts that are facing the light. You do it on the blue impressions as well. They represent a tree farther away because it is lighter. Okay, so that looks pretty good. How am I doing here? Okay, I'm on 16 minutes. Can I take about 15 seconds here and use some pigment ink on a cotton ball? Okay, let me zoom out here a little bit, and let's add some of this in here. I got to be careful around that versifying black because that is really wet still. So let me just kind of get some of this on that cloud to make it a little bit more kind of dreamy, in spirit. I got too much of it right there. Let's wipe some of it off. Okay. I'm getting it all over my fingers because I've forgotten where I've applied it on the cotton ball, but alright, so that's it a little bit. See, it's kind of lightened it up, and you can, I don't know, did I get that right now? Alright, so there you have it. Quite a bit less time. I think that previous video was, more along the lines of like 50 minutes or something like that. It is a smaller piece of paper, but, that foundation for it is kind of what this is all about, Stamping these, dark impressions right over the top of it really isn't much to do. It's all in the coloring, but that came together fairly quickly, Naturally, for a quarter-size page, I don't have to cover as much area, but on here, there were 3 little trays, and I think I put, I don't know what it would be the equivalent of. It was like a tiny, 2 drops maybe. Or 1 big drop of that, the tumbled glass. The second one, I could have used a little bit less, and maybe a little bit less with that one. So it's like 3 drops, 1 maybe, or something like that. But that's all it really took. And, you could do it with pads too. I can, take a pad and I can dab in and ink it up. But when you have kind of a saturated applicator like that, it really goes quite a long ways, and it really allows you to really spread things around nice and smoothly. But like I said, it's also very convenient to have a pad, dip in, and just go to. But I don't know, for my quick scene, it just kind of expedited the entire process just to use the re-inker technique. Okay, so anyways, hope you enjoyed the quick scene format of this card, Soaring in blue. And if you have any questions, just drop me a note, or if you would like to see kind of the full, kind of more detailed version of this scene using some additional metallics and whatnot, and a few extra impressions of the trees, the full trees, in dark blue from this scene right here, you can check out the previous video and see. On here I use those metallic highlights, which are really fun in the silver. Okay. Alright. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please share, like, and subscribe.